You ready?
They let me know what I really got myself into. See, keep them close.
All right. All mics on? Everybody got your mic on? Got your mic on?
Thank you.
Everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, call to order the Roseville Town Board regular meeting, October 4th, 2022. Welcome, everyone. If you would, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I see we have Boy Scout Troop 236 here with us tonight, and they have graciously volunteered to come up. Just come right up here, be fine, right in front of the table here. And they're going to lead us in the pledge. So, whenever you're ready.
Oh, yes. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, troops. Appreciate that. And if everybody's remain for a second, we'll have Commissioner Austin to lead us in prayer, if you would.
Yes, sir. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance, your wisdom, and support as we begin our meeting. Come and reveal your will as we discuss the agenda. Enlighten us that we may know how you want us to accomplish our task. Direct our thoughts, decisions, words, and actions towards the right path and help keep us on track. Let your will be done as we do your will in the town of Roseville. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a pretty full agenda tonight, so if you would review the agenda. I will address any changes, additions, anything the board wishes with the agenda. So how so the board move on that?
Mayor Curran, the board may wish to go into closed session at the end of the meeting on the regular agenda.
Yes, I think it is items on here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion for the agenda.
So moved.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Vogel. Is that a second?
A second.
Second, is there any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, board. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll move into the board liaison reports. First, Commissioner Paul Vilga, anything from Parks and Recreation Advisory Board?
So we met on 9/28, reviewed the final draft of the cost recovery policy that'll be coming before the board sometime in a future meeting. Also discussed the flow of review of the development of plans through the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, getting the plans in front of the board so they can take a look at like the greenways, anything else they'd like to see on the plans beforehand so we can kind of get that settled up front. And also, on another note, wanted to put a plug in for the Roseville High School Marching Band. They are having their first ever marching band competition at Roseville High School Stadium, and that will be held on Saturday, October 8th at 5 p.m. I'd like to have everybody come out if you can, support them on their first endeavor in this.
What's that date again, Paul?
October 8th, 5 p.m. Yep. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good report. Commissioner Sutton, Economic Development, anything from Economic Development front?
Really not a lot to report. I think I'm going to forego an update at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Medley, anything from Planning Board?
Yeah, there's a lot from planning, but I just need more time to speak with the attorney on two of the projects. Parker Ridge rezoning, which I think it's important that more information is divulged in regards to that rezoning to the commissioners. So I do want to have an opportunity to speak with them about that. And 5109 Mitchell Mill Road, that's another one that's coming forward to the board in the next coming weeks. Other than that, the technical amendments that came up were pretty interesting, and I think they're going to help us in a lot of the decisions that we make moving forward. So again, for Parker Ridge rezoning, I'm going to save that for now. and 5109 Mitchell Mill Road. I'm going to pass on that right now. We'll talk about
Okay.
it at the workshop.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. Okay, Commissioner Austin, anything from veterans?
Yes, sir. On October 1st, the Department of Veteran Affairs has extended the PAC Act. The PAC Act is a new law that expands the VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits and toxic substances. This includes World War II, Vietnam, and also OAF, and Gulf War. I advise all veterans in town of Roseville that needs assistance with this to reach out to the Wake County Service Office, the VFW, or the DAV. As well, last night I attended a Wake County Board meeting and witnessed Commissioner Vicki Adamson read the Operation Greenlight proclamation. Operation Greenlight is a nationwide initiative spearheaded by the National Association of County Veteran Affairs Service Officers to support veterans and raise awareness about the challenges that many faces. It encouraged that residents, businesses, towns, cities, and community organizations participate by simply changing one light in their building or home to a green bulb. Lowe's, Home Depot got discounts on these, by the way. This can be an exterior light or a passerby sees or an interior light. By shining a green light, we let our veterans know that they are seen, appreciated, and supported by us all. More information can be found on the WakeGov website under Operation Greenlight. And then, lastly, effective January 1st, 2023, the verification for veteran-owned small businesses will transfer from the VA to the SBA. The verification is a critical process that allows veteran-owned small businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned small business to access the veteran-specific benefits, including obtaining certain government contracts and the purchases of surplus government property. This process established for all by confirming that, in fact, the businesses are owned and ran by veterans. Any more information, you can speak to those organizations that I talked about earlier. And the verification will stop taking applications starting October 24th. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Good report. Appreciate that, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sneed, Public Safety, any report?
Actually, no, we don't have anything. We have our meeting on October 11th, which will be our first meeting here in just in a while, and nothing else except for the proposed unification resolution that's already on the agenda.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your work with that group there for sure. Okay, next item, we got with us tonight Chief Simmons, and he's going to give us a police report, I think.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. I know y'all have a full plate, so I'll be brief. I just wanted to talk about a couple of community events. One we just wrapped up, and that was our National Night Out that we've been talking about for some time. I appreciate everyone who came out to support the event, our sponsors and our vendors to make it a success. We didn't quite get the attendance that we were looking for this year, but I think the remnants of Hurricane Ian coming in, there was some question whether or not we were still having the event, and I think a lot of the schools were closed on Friday, so I'm sure parents were making some arrangements if they needed to for that. So, but we did have a great time. We still had over 200 hamburgers and hot dogs that were given away. So we had very minimal leftover food this year, so that was good to see. Out of this event and two other smaller events, we were able to raise a total of $4,239 for our upcoming Shot with a Cop event. So I thought that was awesome. And we've also received our largest one-time donation from GFL, which was $2,000 this year. So we were great to have that. The Shot with a Cop program will be held on December 10th at a local Walmart close by. The purpose of Shot with a Cop program is to foster positive relationships between students and law enforcement. And the key is to develop a better and more trusting relationship between law enforcement and the children and the community. So we appreciate everybody who's already donated, and the donations continue to come in to make that event successful as well. The applications will be given to some of the social workers for Wake County Public Schools, and that will take place on October 10th is when we'll start taking applications. So we hope to have a great turnout this year to be able to support some of those families during Christmas this year. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that, Chief. Any
Thanks, Chief.
questions for the chief from anyone? It was a great event, so thanks for all the hard work. I know it doesn't come easy. It was more other police departments there than I expected. I mean, that was the thing I didn't expect is all the other agencies involved in the night, because they were from everywhere just about. How many was it, do you know?
I'm not sure the total. I know they came as far as Apex, which is a little ways away. Raleigh came and supported. Several departments, so they all banded together, and I've been to some other ones that wasn't quite that supportive from other agencies, but we were glad to see everyone come together and showing support for our event. So,
That's cool.
Oh, no.
yes, sir.
Nice event.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, public is invited to be heard. It's an opportunity for someone, or anyone really in the public, to speak to the board. I would ask be limited to 3 minutes. And I think we do have a couple signed up here. All right, Thomas, come on up. And I know where you live, but state your name and address for the board, and I think I know what your concern is, but the floor is yours.
My name's Thomas LaFrancois. I live on Manley Farm Road, next to a proposed Hills of Harris Creek subdivision that y'all are considering. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I had somebody type it all out for me.
That's okay.
Once again, the city meets county, and though the town board works for and represents the citizens of Roseville, it also has a responsibility to work with its neighboring communities, i.e. county residents. Although town residents and future expanding subdivisions annexed have the luxury and bills associated with city water, Wake County residents typically do not, their own well and septic. The future subdivisions annexed by Rolesville will surely encounter rock outcroppings that the developers will choose to blast in order to grade for level building pads and even out the slope of streets in order to meet guidelines. Hills of Harris Creek will be a prime example of this if passed. Drilling and blasting interrupts the natural flow of water tables, sometimes changing the course of water veins in the subsurface, thereby making an existing well that once supplied a neighboring resident with an ample supply of water now dry. Sent Mike Alden, I got senior plans guy. Sent him a copy of a study that was done, although it was in Connecticut, the rock formations and the underlying theories is the same. Go back on script. I supplied a hydrologist report to support this fact, so it's not just my opinion. And also sent a reference to Durham, North Carolina town ordinance, and in particular a Blowing Rock, North Carolina town ordinance that Roseville should consider adopting something similar. The Blowing Rock one was rather interesting. It had a surety bond attached with any permits. The Durham one did not. There are approximately 30 wells on Manley Farm Road that could be impacted within the 1,500 feet from proposed property disruption. I did the math on it. I've got a good friend that's a well driller. You can spend, depending on the depth that you drill and what you got to do to a well, it's nothing to spend $20,000 plus on a well these days. So you can do the math on the 30 wells, give or take, on Manley Farm Road. I would suggest a surety bond of $1 million just for the worst case scenario, or put stipulations in the Ellis Group's approval of no blasting, which is highly unlikely. This action would also protect the Ellis Group and the town of Roseville from possible litigation and settlements. So, that's about it.
Thank you, Thomas. And Thomas reached out to me a couple times about this. So I appreciate you coming and bringing that to the board. And I forwarded something from Thomas to you. I never really considered whales before in blasting. So that's an interesting article that you kind of sent to us. So I'm sure we'll follow up with it in planning department and make sure that I see Meredith nodding back
There
there.
are other towns that have, y'all's ordinance is just for noise.
Right.
These other ordinance, statutes, ordinance, whatever you can call them, are more for protecting what else is out there.
Gotcha.
So it's just supposed to help us to protect the town.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for, naturally, Roseville is known for rock. Maybe not as much as blowing rock, but, probably a lot in itself. So appreciate that. Thank you, Tom. Okay, George is next. Come on up, George, and I know where you live really good, but you state your name and address for me, please.
Hi, I'm George Garcia, 524 Averett Road, and I'm glad that you all are going to integrate the fire department here. This is a license plate from someone back in 1966, so you're standing on the shoulders of other people that are no longer with us, okay? I had three concerns, and I'm going to be very brief. All these closed-door meetings or closed session meetings, the taxpayer voters may not know what decisions you're making behind closed doors. They're the ones who actually foot the bill, okay? And they will, beyond your terms of that you'll be serving here, 15, 20 years. One of them, a prime example, is the farm on 401. Decisions were made. The taxpayers probably are somehow defraying the cost of that property, and nothing has happened with it. So, and there's a lot of people asking about it, okay? So somehow clarity needs to be imparted. It's not happening. And everybody pays taxes, and you're getting grants from the state, federal, and the county. It's not just the people that live in the town of Roseville. It affects everybody. That's economics. Okay. The other thing that I'd like to talk about very quickly is a traffic plan for the preserve, which was not approved by DOT. They denied it, and they're having to go back and do an integrated assessment to include the Jones Dairy and Averett Road. You guys approved the north part of that development, yet there seems to be a disconnect as to what's going to happen to the traffic as you go along. It has to be integrated somehow. In our case, our property on 524 Averett Road, when it was surveyed in 2015, they took another 5 feet off our front. And they said, when I talked to the surveyor who actually serves on the board here now, he said that I asked him the reason why they came in and took extra 5 feet, and they said it was because of the city and the county, that they had gone ahead when they did that survey and actually came inside. Supposedly some kind of ordinance or something. But the question is, the adjacent properties, 514, 525, and 604, that hasn't happened. I looked at, in fact, I looked this afternoon again just to make sure. Two of the properties are owned by Wake Forest Investments, 525 and 604. And the other one is an individual, and it has changed hands 2 times now. Okay? But we are going to bear a brunt here. And the other thing is, there are some people that are coming and making plans for other people's properties. Raleigh Utilities Department, they put a sewage manhole 4 foot from our property line on Chandler's Ridge. And when I asked them, they said, oh, you're going to develop that property. It's going to be developed. We're not. that property is under a trust, and it's never going to be developed. The implication was eminent domain by either the county or whatever. We'll go to court on that. But it seems like this whole area, both in the county and in the city, there's some implications that it's becoming a real estate brokerage. I had several people approach me and said that some people had come over to buy their property and said that the city had told them that that property would be for sale. Okay. Somehow it needs to be clarified because the taxpayers, voters, need to make decisions when the time comes. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. I think one point I'll point out, partner, I see you got Derek here in the audience too. I have had questions about the park too, and I know we got some money budgeted this year on getting that started. Maybe do a report on that next time,
Okay.
where our status is with the road going in there or the turnoff and stuff. So I think the citizens would like to know what's happening. I think we got some plans for it this fiscal year.
Yeah, we're currently
I think.
already working on that. They're working on the traffic study for that off of NCDOT, or NCDOT is working with them. And we're also getting that designed by McAdams. So yeah, I can get a whole
It'd be great.
thing together for that.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Okay, with that, is anybody else? I know there's only 2 signed up, but anybody else have anything they want to add? I'm not hearing or seeing any. We will go to the consent agenda. Board, if you would, consider the consent agenda. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Most of it is giving clerk directions to do some investigations there. So I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank
Second.
you. Okay, we got a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Is there any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, we appreciate that. And now we will get to the board's action items. First item is Land Development Ordinance, LDO, Round 3, Technical Amendments. And looks like Meredith, you stepped up. You're going to lead us with this one. And this is a public hearing. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead on this one and open the public hearing. Public hearing is open, and if you would do an introduction for us, please.
Certainly. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I hope you all are doing well this evening. This is Technical Amendment 22-01 LDO Round 3. I prefer to call it Round 3 because we've done 2 before. So we really started talking about this set of amendments at the joint work session with the Planning Board back in March. So you all and our Planning Board have done a lot of work on this set of amendments, and here we are tonight to go over them and have a public hearing. In your memo or staff report, I've had a few comments on the layout of the report I just want to share with you. The first part of the report is a table, and that includes a summary of the amendment topic and then the recommendation. I'm someone who digests information in that type of format, so that's why I included that in there, because I know there have to be other people like me out there. But following that summary table is the actual amendment text. So each one organized by amendments 1 through 12. So hopefully that feeds into whatever your brain prefers to digest. So for the first amendment, or for the presentation, I'd like to go through each amendment separately. And then if we have questions or comments on that, we can handle those. And if we need some additional information, let me know. I have some slides in reserve, some images that we've looked at before. If we need some more information, hopefully I'll have that for you. So with the first amendment, it has to do with allowing townhomes in the residential medium zoning district. And just a preview of the Planning Board discussion. The Planning Board is not in favor of this amendment. So I would like to explain why it's being proposed so you all can let me know what you think. So our staff is proposing this amendment because we do see a lot of townhome development come in at a medium density range. So medium density is 3 to 5 units per acre. So right now in the residential medium district, single-family detached homes can be developed at 3 units per acre. And if they're in a cluster format, they can be developed at 5 units per acre. So if townhomes were included in the residential medium district, they would likely be more at that 5 unit per acre point, but we would add a note in that table to go with that. So what are your thoughts on townhomes in residential medium?
Can you tell us why the planning board's not in favor of it?
They think they're a better fit in residential high, and the description for the residential high district is something more walkable. They didn't think townhomes were a good fit in residential medium because it's more of a traditional residential district. They saw it as more of a single-family detached district.
So we had something like this before, I believe, and we limited it to a certain percentage in our previous UDO. So I don't know. I know that was a big topic last time, that we had an issue with that before. But I don't know, was it going from medium to high, or was it going from high to medium last time?
Are you talking about the R3?
Yeah, like the
When we had
R3,
that?
yeah.
That was different. Because we had like 15 acres or something
Yeah, like
designated for
yeah.
townhomes. And we had an unintended consequence of that.
Right.
And we came back to revisit it. Is that what you're
Right,
referring to?
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like that's what,
Yeah.
But my concern is what the planning board was concerned about, the access to services, because I thought that was kind of our intent, was to have it be walkable, have it be connected to services and not, because I think we had builders or developers that were trying to go out into these areas where there are half-acre lots or whatever and plop a bunch of townhomes in the middle of it, and I don't think that was this board's intent.
Okay.
And I think that's why we came back around on that R3 because of that. But really trying to give it that walkable feel for them to get to services, because if you're way out on whatever road, you have no services. That was my thought, but
Right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember it that way, Paul.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think, if I recall, we put a lot of discussion in this when we did LDO. And, you know, one of the things that we ran into, there is no low density in town. I don't know if,
Right.
I don't know if since I've been on the board, if anybody asked for low density.
Not since I've been here.
And I've been here 22 years almost, and I don't think anybody's asked for low density. So when you have medium, that means it can go anywhere, everywhere. A townhouse could go anywhere and everywhere. You open it up, everything in town when you say medium, because you only limit it low, which is only in the watershed.
Right.
And the second thing is, I think the commissioners are right. You know, it was supposed to be towards a node or something that's really walkable, and it's not out in the middle of nowhere, which that's where a lot of our medium densities are. I think if I recall, we changed that for a reason.
Yeah, we did.
Well, you all are talking me out of it.
I'm just trying to figure out, why did this come back up again? I know that the discussion was in the planning board, and I recall what they said, but
This came up because we were seeing a lot of townhome developments come in at a medium density range. And I think when you all in the planning board see residential high, it can feel a little intense. So if it were residential medium, it might be a little less or
Yeah,
more palatable.
It is a third point too, and I couldn't think of that when I was talking. The third point, I think, if I recall, was we encouraging mixed use with commercial.
Commercial.
And this gives opportunity to have the high-density townhouses, apartments with a mixed use. And you can do that anywhere as long as you keep the density. Mixed use can go in a medium or high. It's just the number that's going in there.
Sure.
So I think we would lose that encouragement of mixed-use commercial probably a little bit, right? Is that fair to say?
You know what, I think that's an excellent point. So if you keep it in the residential high or the activity center districts, that will push people towards the mixed-use district when trying to get a certain density. So it sounds like we're scratching this one.
I think so.
Yep.
So residential medium with mixed use is what I heard.
Well, townhomes are allowed in our activity center districts.
Right.
So applicants can request that, and then we'll see a little
Yeah.
mix in there.
I think one thing maybe to consider, because I believe the board is tight on this one, that, we don't want to open it up everywhere, but I think Paul was getting to a point of percentages, and I think we had, in other words, if Thomas wanted to do a neighborhood of houses and townhouses together, then it could be a percentage of townhouses and houses to give you a nice blend neighborhood where you have all price points and stuff like that. I don't think that can happen in the LDO, can it?
Well, if we,
Unless you put a commercial with it, make it mixed use, you really can't do a mixed type of,
like a mixed dense, or a mixed housing type.
Yeah.
I guess if we're looking at Parker Ridge, you'll be looking at Parker Ridge soon, we saw that at Planning Board. They're asking for 2 different zoning districts in order to get the single-family detached and single-family attached. If they would ask for an activity center district, they would have to provide some non-residential space. But that, you can have different housing types in an activity center district.
But isn't I'm getting confused. Callis Falls, is that how you say it? I always mess up the name.
I always wonder if it's Kalis or Kalis
Kalis.
myself.
Kalas Falls. Isn't that townhomes and single-family homes?
It is.
With no commercial.
That was under the
UDO.
UDO.
But with no commercial, right?
I don't recall any commercial
Yeah, there's
there,
no commercial, so it's not mixed use.
Yeah, we got
You've
quite a few like
mix
that.
of housing, right. But our goal is to get mixed use. Our goal is commercial, right? And so if we're encouraging people to build townhomes and single-family homes and are thinking of that as mixed use, to me, that's not mixed use. Mixed
agree with
use
you.
includes commercial, some type of
A
commercial,
non-residential and a
non-residential, let me
residential,
correct
yes.
that, non-residential. Where there's a coffee shop or whatever, several shops, something, because for developers, yeah, residential is residential, whether it's a townhome or a home, right? And so that doesn't, to me, get at what we're trying to get at with this board. Our tax base, as we've been reminded lately, is still at 92, 93, 94, I don't even know what the percentage is. It's high. So we can't get that if we continue to encourage townhomes and single-family homes together in a cluster. I don't see how we get mixed use.
Meredith, then, do you want to explain the cluster and how that would basically override what everybody is saying right now?
Well, the cluster is allowed with residential low and residential medium. And in a cluster development, you can do smaller lot sizes and higher densities, like, for example, in residential medium, I mentioned the by right is 3 units per acre. If you do a cluster subdivision, you can do 5 units per acre. The lots are a little smaller, the density is a little higher, and you have to preserve 40% open space in a cluster development.
So that doesn't get to commercial.
Exactly.
To
Right,
me,
it
we're
doesn't have
shooting
anything- yeah, it
ourselves in the
doesn't-
foot
yeah.
with that.
Okay.
We're not getting where we need to be. We've got residential coming, which is great, but we're not addressing our tax issue. And until you push that lever and force developers to bring in commercial or bring in a mixed-use product, they're not going to bring it. When I look at 5401 or 54, whatever that development's called on 401,
I know what you're talking about.
they pushed for commercial. And I know sometimes it takes a while to develop, but we just don't want just residential developers that don't want to help our community grow tax base-wise. And I think if you don't move the levers in the right way, we're going to continue to get more of the same, single-family homes and then townhomes, and they're not that affordable. Whatever word you want to define it as, because somebody paying a 1,600 square foot townhome is $350. That's not affordable to everyone. So I don't think we move those levers by doing this cluster process that's basically giving more residential, just 2 different types of housing. I don't think it addresses what we're trying to get to, at least what I think this board is trying to get to. Because I've heard that over and over, and from the citizens, that we need more commercial.
Also, with that, with the cluster, the percentages, I remember I mentioned that to you the other day. What are those percentages? Because if, as somebody had referred to something as swampland, but we're saying in the watershed, not saying it's swamp, what is that percentage? What is active, what is passive that will define the amount of homes that are going in that area?
Are we opposing anything cluster?
And I'm trying to define it.
Cluster in this package.
No, I'm just trying to
I know, but
define it
that's-
based on what she said with the.
That's still on
with-
topic.
That is the topic, Ronnie. We're talking about high density and medium density. And I'm asking if that's the same. I just want to clarify it for better understanding for anything. How is that, how do you define that with a cluster? So to me, I'm not trying to get off task. I'm just trying to understand something moving forward.
I'm thinking that we call it conservation, or what do you call it?
Actually,
Cluster?
there's both a cluster and a conservation option in our LDO.
It
gets a little
can go
confusing.
in medium or high. It doesn't matter density, right? It's the
And
same. It's
cluster is only allowed for residential low and residential medium.
Okay,
And then the conservation falls more with the watershed area.
gotcha.
But that's a difference, though. All right,
So you
thank you.
can't put a cluster in a high.
You cannot put a cluster in residential high, as, right now, as per the LDO.
Okay, so that made a difference. And I would say moving forward, if I don't understand something I'm asking, I don't want to be cut off because you may think I'm going off task. I'm just trying to put other things together, not about any other projects, just to understand where we are at this moment in conversation. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Well, I'm feeling a big no on
Yeah,
number one.
I think you got a no on that one. Move on to the
Okay.
next one.
Number two is very happy. This was inspired by a conversation with Commissioner Vilga. And in order to support the Mayor's Monarch Challenge, we'd like to add pollinator gardens as a passive feature for open space. Right now, the table in the LDO has a column for active, types of active open space and types of passive open space. And in the passive category, one of the items says garden. So we'd like to change that to say gardens such as pollinator gardens to promote that in our ordinance.
Thank you.
Meredith, the planning board had also suggested making community garden active open space.
Yes, and I made a note of that, and I have not included it in this, so that's something we could certainly add in tonight. Yes, thank you. So the planning board was interested in noting community gardens in the table, and they were thinking that should be an active open space option because people engage in the planting with that. So if you all have an interest in that, I'm happy to make a note and add that.
That's a good addition.
Yeah.
Just write myself. Cool. So for amendment number 3, this has to do with perimeter buffers. And we spent quite a bit of time at the September 20th work session talking about the perimeter buffers. I am happy to go back through those slides if you would like me to. If you remember all that and don't feel the need to, we can move forward with this one. Just as a reminder, this amendment removes the requirement for a type 1 buffer between non-residential or parcels of the same non-residential zoning district. And then it adds a landscape-only buffer type between residential districts of the same zoning.
So you wouldn't have like a fence, you'd have
Right.
landscaping.
Yes,
So did the planning board have an opinion on them?
they liked it a lot. They were very happy.
All of them?
Yes.
Except for one.
With the, no, they were on board with the perimeter buffer. Oh, say that again?
Except for the very first one you showed
Oh,
us.
yes, they had some comments on 2 other ones that I'll go over towards the end, but they did not care for number 1, and they were on board with the remainder, except for the 2 we've pulled, but I'll tell you what those are. But they were pleased with the work that we went through with the perimeter buffers. Okay, to go on to number 4? Okay, wonderful. So number 4, they were also happy with that, and I think you all were also, we'd like to add a 10-foot streetscape buffer on collectors. Right now, it's just noted on thoroughfares. A 30-foot streetscape buffer is noted on thoroughfares. So this would involve having street trees on collectors.
Can you give me an example of a collector street?
Certainly. Right now, the one that the fitness club is on, why can't I think of that?
Granite Falls?
Okay, thank you. That's a collector street. And also, like with the proposed Parker Ridge development, the LC coming up, on our community transportation plan thoroughfare and collector recommendation map, it shows a collector street connecting School Street through the property over to Young Street. So that type of connection is a collector level connection.
So on Granite Falls, it currently exists, or that would be one where it would exist? Does it currently exist on Granite Falls? I'm trying to
Yeah,
visualize it.
that's a collector level street.
But does it have a 10-foot buffer right now?
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't believe so.
I was just trying to get it in my head.
So
Gotcha.
it wouldn't be retroactive, just that level of street.
Going forward.
So what about like Redford Place Drive? Like, I see that, like the trees on the side, like, I could see that being a buffer on either side. Is that an example of a collector?
Redford one?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
about 60-foot right-of-way, a little bit high, just a step up from a typical residential street.
Yep. Gotcha. Thanks. I'm good with that.
Number 5, parking lot landscaping. So in our LDO, we have landscape requirements for terminal islands. That means those are the islands at the end of parking bays where you have trees and shrubs. And that requirement is pretty clear. And the LDO seems a little unclear with the interior islands and divider medians. They appear to be optional in some cases. So to supplement all of the parking lot landscaping requirements, staff would like to require that every parking space be within 60 feet of the trunk of a tree and make sure you get shade coverage as your trees grow in your parking lots. This requirement was in the UDO, and I think it's a good one to continue forward, just to make sure we're getting good tree coverage in parking lots. I know I'm that person always going for the parking place that has some shade.
Here's a nice one.
Number 6, we've done a lot of work on this one, both you all and the planning board. It has to do with vegetation preservation. So a tree preservation plan is required for all developments that are greater than, I forget if it's 2 acres or 5 acres, but if it's small, they don't have to do it, but a preservation plan is required. So when you're doing your tree survey, you have to note your deciduous trees that are 18 inches and your evergreen trees that are 16 inches. So if you're going to remove any of those, they have to be replaced, or something has to be replaced. Right now, the ordinance is unclear on how you replace them and how much you have to replace them with. It just says replaced on site with at least 4 or more trees of a similar species and size. We'd like to clarify that requirement by stating that the replacement would be 25% of the caliper inches removed. And if we just looked at Walbrook as an example, the site plan that has the Publix on it, that one, they removed 23 trees. And if they had to replace the caliper inches, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers with me, if they had to replace the caliper inches by 25% and ended up being more than what we were thinking it would be, so we feel like it's a reasonable balance and would put some trees back on site and hopefully discourage removal of some areas and trees if possible.
So explain that to me. I'm not good at math.
Okay. Let me try to.
So if they remove 23 trees, are you then saying 25% of the 23 have to be replaced?
Let's say they removed
Or the
20.
size.
Let's say they removed 23 trees, and I don't have my phone with me to do the math on it. If they removed, let's make it an easier number, 20 trees that were 20 inches in caliper, that would be 400 inches that were removed.
Gotcha.
So they'd have to replace that removal with 100 caliper inches on site. So, if the trees were 4 inches in caliber, that's kind of big. Now help me do the math on that.
I told you I'm not good at math. I
Thanks.
gave that disclaimer.
I need
So
help.
those 20 trees would be removed, but 40 would have to be put in place if they were 2-inch trees. So you're taking out 40 trees, but you're taking out 20 trees, but they're putting 40 in somewhere else on the lot.
But are you
Because
getting,
You're replacing the equivalent diameter of all the trees you're taking out.
Thank you, Derek. But are you getting the size that you wanted? Because if they take out large trees, that's my concern. Are you then replacing them with, well, they'll be deciduous, but will they be
Here's where I'm going to check my.
good-sized trees is what I'm saying? Because
Right.
we've seen the whole, I don't want to say clear cutting, because I don't want everybody to get all weirded out.
Right,
Removing all the trees and then coming back and putting in willows or whatever, right? And it takes time to mature. So you're going to take out mature trees and then come back with, 3-inch trees? Or are you going to remove them? Does that cover that, is my question?
We're not specifying a size. We're saying trees totaling 25% of the caliper inches removed. Right now, we're leaving that as being flexible. We could certainly add a minimum size with this standard.
I just don't get why we allow good trees to just be destroyed, right? And I like trees, yes, but I am not sitting here hugging every tree and say, don't take down any trees. But sometimes to me, it's done without even thinking. Just clear out some of them you need to clear out versus clearing them all out and then, we're going to go back in and put a 20-foot buffer. I don't understand the logic. I'm not a developer. I'm not paying to remove the trees, but if you've got 50 feet and you can clear 30, why would you clear 50 and then go back and put in 20? Someone explain that to me. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Sure.
The problem you're gonna have is you take out 20 trees and you put in 40 to accommodate the 20 you took out, you got a mess in 10 years. Because those trees are gonna grow. Then you got a mess. Then what are you gonna do?
That's a good question.
So my question is there something we can do to preserve instead of just, whatever you call that, taking out all the trees and then putting the 20-foot buffer back? Can you say preserve it versus letting them tear it down
Right
completely?
now, the tree preservation requirement in the LDO is you must preserve 10% of the trees on site. And
Paul, is that number high enough? That doesn't feel high
that
enough.
was
That doesn't feel high enough.
Mine would be 75%, but I mean, that's,
Yeah, I think it's higher than 10, though.
yeah.
Because I do think we had this situation happen. And they're like, but we're going to put a buffer in, but why did you tear it down? You had established deciduous trees that were doing just fine, and you cut them all down, and you said, well, when we're done in 5 years, we'll put some more trees up. That is what I'm trying to avoid.
Sure.
That's it. Whatever we need to do to get to that, that's my concern.
And I do, why so many? Why replace with so many?
Why replace?
With so many trees? Like what Mr. Sanders just said, what's going to happen when you put so many trees back down there in 10?
Years later, you got a mess. You gotta take them all back out.
This requirement allows some flexibility in the replacement size. If you look at
Don't make sense.
the Walbrook development, I've spoke with their landscape architect extensively about their landscape design, and they were worried they would not be able to fit all of the replacement trees on their site. So it would be potentially easier for them to do some bigger trees than a bunch of smaller trees.
Yeah, I think we need a minimum caliper for one thing.
10%.
There should be a minimum caliper, and yeah, that 10%'s always killed me, but
Right now, the minimum caliper for trees in the LDO, I believe, is 2.5 inches.
Okay.
So we could say you can't go below our current minimum standard.
2.5
So
inches.
a baby tree.
2.5 inches, depends on the type of tree.
Feet or inches?
no inches, but
Said inch.
about that big
Oh,
around.
you really meant that.
Yeah,
That's like,
yeah.
it's the, like this.
Right, we know it's the circumference of the tree, but you're talking about a young tree, right? So if you're taking down a tree this size, or this size, or this size, and you're gonna replace it with a bunch, I just don't understand the logic. Why wouldn't you just cut down 10 feet of the 30 feet and leave the 20 feet as the buffer? That's all I'm trying to
Get it
understand.
clearer than it is to plan around.
Board members, to the extent it might be helpful in terms of how this came to you, this was modeled off of a number of other ordinances that would hopefully provide the right incentives to get the right distribution and size of tree on our sites as they redevelop, so that nursery stock is, figure, 1/2-inch caliper, which is about a 4-foot little 1-gallon bucket tree, up to 6 or 7-inch caliper tree, which would be a specimen tree for a site. a developer or property owner, when redeveloping, would take a whole bucket of inches, the 400 inches idea, and know that they had to replace 100 inches in that case. All those trees are going to grow, and the landscape architect who's working on the site plan will take that into consideration and decide, both as a cost basis, as a design item, whether to use a lot of little trees or fewer larger trees at the nursery. Or a combination. But a lot of small trees can be very expensive, which is that was a problem we had with the old one. Not only would it be expensive to have so many little trees, you can't provide enough habitat space for so many little trees, which was a problem for the landscape architects, which is why we have this 25% that has come back to you. And we do have a minimum caliper inches of 3, which is three caliper inches in the LDO.
Meredith.
Meredith, I almost think this one needs more discussion.
Okay.
Maybe we need to take this one back to the workshop. It's almost getting to be a workshop
Certainly.
now.
Certainly, if you
And,
want to
you
look
know-
at the whole tree preservation plan piece and how that
Yeah,
works.
I think the commissioners are looking for more discussion and more understanding about, all this stuff, so. Y'all agree? Y'all agree?
I do, but I do want to ask her to include also that there was discussion about having professionals.
That one I dropped
Oh,
based on the planning board's
Maybe want to
recommendation.
bring it back to the workshop,
We'll
though.
co- yeah, more discussions needed
okay.
thereof.
If everybody's okay, let's do that, because, we don't want to do something not right, so.
I also think it's a good idea, like we did with the planning board. We had a kind of a workshop with the planning board. It would be good to do that with Parks and Rec when we're talking about this stuff. Because I'd love to have folks' input.
Okay. Sounds good.
That's a good idea, too. Thank you.
So amendment number 7, right now, the LDO states that plants shall be of a native and locally adaptive species. We'd like to add some more to that and require that there are at least 4 different plant species with no one being greater than 35% of the palette. So for example, if your plant list typically has trees, shrubs, ground cover, and some ornamental items. So with the trees, there would have to be 4 different types of trees. I mean, we see a lot of willow oaks and red maples, so we'd have to see 2 other tree types mixed in there, with no one being more than a little over a third of the palette. So just a little more plant diversity, and the planning board loved that.
Yes, that's a great idea.
And we've talked about street light poles before. We talked about that back in March at the joint work session. And I would like to add a statement in LDO that says wood poles are prohibited in residential subdivisions.
What poles?
Wood.
Oh, wait, okay.
Definitely. We can't get those prohibited, period.
Don't think so. But it'll
Thought I'd
help,
try.
it'll look nicer in the neighborhoods.
Can I add one other thing on the trees, just for the
Yes.
discussion that we
Yes,
have later?
certainly.
The non-residential areas, like the parking areas, like what trees are put there? What trees, what shrubs? Because we've run into something lately where you can't see the businesses because of the shrubs and the types of trees. So
Okay.
can we add that to the discussion as well?
Certainly.
I think that was part of what they were saying about getting a professional to do these plans, to pick these trees out, versus going to the nursery to just grab whatever's the cheapest. So I think that's important to put that back. Thanks.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Appreciate it.
So I know you all in the planning board are also excited about amendment number 9. This reduces our threshold for traffic impact analyses by half. Right now, the threshold is a traffic impact analysis is required if there are 100 peak hour trips or 1,000 daily trips. And the proposed amendment reduces that to 50 peak hour trips or 500 daily trips. I know we've talked about that one multiple times.
Yay. So this board is concerned about traffic. Go board.
And Amendment 10, we've been talking about that one for a while as well. And that one adds a statement to the LDO that access points should be implemented as recommended by a traffic impact analysis, and also adds the statement that a plan must connect to any existing or planned street stubs. So if there's already a street stub in existence or one on a plan that's been approved but hasn't been built yet, whoever is coming in after that must connect. All right, what was that?
Well, I know this has come up recently, and we said must, and I said maybe must doesn't make sense. So what is the recourse for a developer or a community that comes in and says, we don't want it to connect? Because we've had that happen. Or it just doesn't make sense. I know this is well-intended.
It's tough. I know over my career, I have seen plenty of neighborhoods not want to connect to street stubs. It's good planning practice, transportation practice, design, safety to be connected. It's just safer to have more connections.
Than less. I just remembered the townhome proposal that came to us earlier in the year, and that it would go from 0 connectedness to, I think there were 3 points of access, and they were like, that's overkill. So I just think there needs to be something to, I don't know. In every case, I don't think it necessarily works, and I've heard this board say otherwise in 2 cases, I remember, where they were like, no, we're not gonna connect it. So if you've got 3, maybe it's at least 1, I don't know, because they were proposing 3 different exits and entrances for their neighborhood, so.
And they said as written, it wasn't really clear, right?
Right now, the LDO says streets shall be interconnected and connect with adjacent streets and provide for multiple routes. It doesn't say, multiple means more than one, but that you could make that mean whatever you want it to mean. So just looking for more definition.
All right,
Any other?
just remember the rulings that y'all made on 2 of these cases, and we did not connect them.
I guess the board always have, authority to not do it if you want to not do it, I think, right? I mean, that's the board decision. It's a legislative decision, I guess, but, from their perspective, what they need is guidance that, and to me, it doesn't make sense if Paul lives on a street that's stubbed out and something's going next door, he should know that it's going to go next door. If you live on that stubbed out street, it's part of the design to connect everything together, right?
Right.
And I can understand why if you live on a dead-end street, you'd love to live on a dead-end street, but where do we draw the line to this one is okay and this one is not,
That's my question. It was approved twice. It's 2 different cases.
And your question really is 2 different entities, because that's on the realtor as well, and that person to know that this street is stubbed out, but it may be open. It probably will be open. So more guidance is needed for sure.
For clarity, as written, this would be a requirement. This would not be an optional decision. The legislative decision is the regulation that you'd be making now.
So when the case comes before us, it then becomes us making a decision on the development, which we looked at.
You wouldn't, as written, you wouldn't make a decision because it would just be the LDO requirement. The only way it might come forward perhaps would be with a variance request to the Board of Adjustment where someone is seeking because of, let's say the topography is vastly different. You would need a parachute to get from this property line to this property line. They would come forward for a variance, but it should not come to you as written here in the staff technical amendment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in that case, it should have never been done to start with. You shouldn't have stubbed out something you wouldn't never be able to connect, where it should have been a cul-de-sac or something put in to keep from doing that. So
That's true, and I think the board has discovered there have been some old county subdivisions. There's history sometimes where we don't always know exactly why a stub was made.
But according to this, the stub is there, so it has to be connected.
Or eventually will be connected.
Yeah.
Correct. The idea being that it had been stubbed in the past as part of a plan for interconnection. That's right.
So the word is must, right? If it was substituted and put should, what would happen then? Would it be a legislative discussion?
You mean here?
Yes, if
Well,
this
if it-
proposal's must.
If the majority of the board
should
is
be
good with
must.
it, I'm good with
It
it.
should be must.
So
I'm gonna say Dave.
A standard has to be done.
If the majority's
go with
good, let's
standard.
move on.
the answer is that we don't write laws as should.
yeah.
We write our comp plan as should.
What did the planning board say on it, Murder?
They were in support.
Move forward.
Must it is.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Amendment 11 would add a statement to the interpretation section of the LDO saying the Land Development Administrator has the authority to make general interpretations. Right now, the LDO only notes that the Land Development Administrator can make a use interpretation.
And the Land Development Administrator is, that's what I thought.
Meredith.
Okay.
Typically the planning director, and sometimes that role can be assigned to another staff person. But for us, right now, it's me.
I don't understand the difference in the two. What are you changing
A
there?
use interpretation versus a general interpretation. Right now, the LDO states that I can look at uses, and let's say someone comes in and wants to put a particular type of business in, and it's not listed in our use table. I can make an interpretation that that use is similar to this use, and we would follow those standards. So it's pretty specific.
So it doesn't really change the project.
No.
It just saves time.
It's a typical and normal thing for an ordinance to have the land development administrator make interpretations. That's part of the job of the administrator.
And challenges to those interpretations then go to our Board of Adjustment. That's the way the statute is set up. Our LDO doesn't provide a neat connection to get to the Board of Adjustment by having someone make that interpretation.
Yes, I thought you did that anyway, but this just clears it up.
I do it anyway. That's a great point.
Right.
Just cleaning it up.
Cleaning it up, okay, gotcha.
At the work session in September, appreciated your review and discussion on Appendix A, the LDO handbook, where we talked about you all focusing your time and energy on setting policy, which is the rezonings and LDO amendments, and the Board of Adjustment acting as the judicial body for special use permits, for example. And it seemed like everything was in good shape there. If you would like me to go back over anything, I do have some additional slides. If we're still good with it, we can keep going.
All right, well, just hang tight and we'll hear from the public real quick.
Oh, wait, there's one that we missed. Are you done? Are you
I
finished?
still have a couple, I still have some information to share, if that's all right. It's about the planning board meeting. And no surprise, staff does recommend approval of this round of LDO amendments.
I'm sorry, Meredith, before you say that, we talked about foundation types as well, but you
Yes,
didn't
I'm
mention
going
that.
to touch on that with this slide.
Oh, okay.
So at the planning board meeting, we had extensive discussion on two amendments, and the planning board and staff agreed that we need more time to work on those. And the first one has to do with the landscape plan and review. And the staff made the recommendation that landscape plans be prepared by a landscape architect or a landscape design professional. And the planning board had a lot of questions about that. And that made me question as well. That's something I would like to discuss further, and that would be something that would be easy to add into our discussion that we were talking about having about tree preservation plans. And then the other item that the planning board really dug into was the foundation types. I know we've talked about the desire for stem wall type foundations to have that minimum height of 18 inches, which equals 3 steps. So they appear more like a crawl space type foundation. The planning board's thought on all of that was, we need more information and we need illustrations in our LDO to help people understand what's desired. And that was not something staff had time to prepare in time for this meeting, so we'd love some additional time to prepare some illustrations for you all to take a look at and include in the next round.
I think that'd be a great idea.
And I mentioned before, the planning board recommended denial of allowing townhomes and residential medium, and we've scratched that one, so we're good. And the planning board did recommend approval of the remaining LDO amendments. So for the public hearing, if anyone wants to speak, I have the 12 amendments listed here. We know we can scratch number 1, and then we're going to also put on hold number 6. So we're looking at 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 7 to 12.
Can I get a clarification on greenways? For the developments, for residential developments, connection to our greenways is a standard?
Yes.
It's no longer optional.
I read it, the connectivity item that we looked at before.
I just want to make sure.
It's also, I would interpret it, since it mentions there have to be multiple routes for pedestrians and vehicles, I would interpret that as greenways. If there's a greenway, you must connect. And if we need to add more teeth there, we
Yeah,
can.
I think it needs to say that.
Okay.
Like, that is required. That's a must for me.
That can be part of the connectivity.
Okay, thank you.
I have just another quick question. I know I asked you, but I don't think I recall the answer. What is the percentage for passive and active? Did we go over that, or we're coming back to it?
I will have to look that up because I don't have that piece memorized. I'm happy to take a look in the LDO.
Okay.
Let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Meredith before we move on to the public? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess, first of all, George, I'm asking for any comments from the public in favor of these. I think it's 10 with the 2 removed. So if you're in favor, George, come on up. Again, for the record, state your name and address, please.
George Garcia, 524 Everett Road. Just a suggestion. We already have a pollinating field set up about 2 acres, 1.5 to 2 acres set up of natural, and they're sequential. We've got a lot of the birds and the bees there. And then in addition to that, we have about 22 acres of emerging pine trees that are coming up. It's an example of the clear cutting that you all have seen around here and then replacing after the fact. And then we have about 6 or 7 acres of mature trees with a wetlands in it and that are integrated all together, okay? So it serves as something that you might want to come over and look before you make a final decision. A lot of bumblebees and bees and whatever, okay? Thank you.
Do that. Thank you for the invitation, George. Appreciate that.
Wait, when you say we, do you mean you?
I'm sorry?
Oh, he means him? Yeah. Oh, you. Okay, when you said we already have it, I wasn't sure who you were referring to.
We have it set up, yes. It's about, altogether about 30 acres. It's already set up. You're welcome to come look. Might give you an idea of things to do in the future. We went ahead and planted natural pollinating plants there, brought the seeds from out of state, and now they're starting to mature. See a lot of bumblebees and a lot of wildlife in there, a lot of deer and whatever. Okay?
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying.
And that's why we want to keep it that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I saw, Derek, you had your hand up. You wanted to say something? Come on up.
Tell him 3 minutes. I said, tell him 30 minutes.
You got it? You got it? Yeah,
Three
3 minutes. I'm being reminded. But
30 minutes?
I was joking, 3 minutes.
But for the record, state your name and address.
Yeah, Derek, excuse me, Derek Verstegen, 414 Virginia Water Drive. I don't have anything prepared because I wasn't sure that there was going to be a public speaking in response to these particular issues. So I'll just say kind of 2 things off the top of my head. I do think Sheila's comment about the greenway connectivity is important and making sure there's a must if there's planned greenways. Because with the transportation plan, the way it's worded, it'll be easy for a developer to kind of just kind of leave their way into bike paths and things like that. And I think if we have stub outs and we have plans, we need that connectivity in there. So I definitely would like to see that be a little bit more holding. As far as tree plantings, I think one thing that's kind of interesting to understand about this area and forestry in general is one of the biggest problems, especially out west, is having too dense of a population of trees. So one of the things you want to look at in this particular area, wherever you basically see a pine tree, you can assume at some point in the history that was agricultural land. So a lot of people get so used to seeing these planted pines as a forest. It's not a real forest. It is literally there for the sake of being timbered in the future for financial gain. So when we talk about looking at a property like Walbrook, I want you to look at how many trees are actually planted pines. They're literally in rows for the intent of being harvested in the future, because it's cheaper in the long run, both tax base wise and financially from a property maintenance, to sometimes plant pine trees rather than actually produce agriculture. And one of those reasons is if you're actually an agricultural farmer, you have to report income every single month or every single year. And with timbers, you don't need to do that. So there's reasons why some of these former fields have turned into planted pines. So Walbrook really isn't taking a lot of trees out that wouldn't have been there 10, 15 years ago. Look on Google Maps and look at some of the history of the aerials and you'll see that. So I know a lot of people go by there and they see, ooh, it's a beautiful forest, and I use it quite a bit. But at the same token, we have to keep certain things in perspective when we look at how that goes. Having said that, I still do obviously want to preserve as much of the forestry that we have and protect it and still allow our wildlife to mingle in and out of where we live and what we do, because it is important, I think, for a lot of different reasons to have that. So I would really like to see how that workshop goes with where that heads, because we definitely need to preserve more, and having a higher percentage or finding the right kind of mix for those trees to be planted elsewhere in the property would be helpful. So that's all I really have. I'll probably actually have something to share with Meredith offline and talk about something else that I'm curious about before I go running off with you guys on that. But I like all these changes. I think it's anything that gives us more natural area, more teeth with our greenway plans, and also keeps the dense populations closer to the connected services like you guys are going, I think is all in the right direction. So, thanks.
Thank you, Derek. I'll invite you back when we do this workshop on trees to come back. Come on up. Hope you're doing well tonight.
I'm okay.
Yeah, state your name and address for the record, if you don't mind, Jimmy.
Jimmy Sanders, 606 Long Medford Drive, here in Roseville. Two things. I agree with you, Sheila, on the beautification of trees and flowers. It's very important, and it's also important that when we are planning these things, let's not hide the businesses. Right across the street in the Food Line Shopping Center, we definitely have the wrong trees planted there throughout the shopping center. I've been calling town hall and crying because once you pull to the stop sign there at Dollar General, you can't see past the tree that's been hanging over. You can't see the traffic coming in off 401 here into the shopping center. That tree should have been cut down or back 5 years ago. Someone said it belonged to Dollar General, someone said it belonged to the town. It doesn't matter. It's a hazard. So that's important that when we plant trees, we need to know the growth and the height and maturity of those trees for businesses. Because when business, we want to advertise and we want to make as much as we can from advertising. The other thing, when you get to the point of planting trees, to eliminate the possibility down the road of having to pull up trees and add more trees, there again, by bringing in a professional landscaper and talking to him in details on what you're looking for, then we can put in trees that have a 30-year lifespan without you having to mess with it, okay? Because if you're gonna take out 20 trees and put in 40, you're gonna have a mess. You know, I do landscape on a small scale, but I move enough trees to let you know that ain't gonna work. The other thing, when you're putting in trees, make sure we are looking for the right root of that tree. Don't be looking for trees, because we have too many in the town of Roseville, where the root come up out of the ground and crawl across the top of the ground. That is ugly, and it does nothing for the beautification of what you just planted. So the root plays a big role in what you're trying to do. And so there's a lot of trees that you can go for that give you a 30-year lifespan, and you don't ever have to deal with the root climbing up out of the ground and taken away from the beautification of what you're trying to establish. And the distancing, when you're planting your trees, the distance between each tree plays a big role. And that's why it's important that you get a professional landscaper to come in, talk to you, and get this stuff established so that you don't have to spend the same money 5 times to try to get what you want for your dollar, okay?
It doesn't.
But that's very important on that one thing about your tree hiding your businesses. Everything in the Food Line Shopping Center need to be taken out because it's just a cluster. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy, and I'll invite you and Derek both back when we talk about trees at the workshop, so good comments, appreciate you doing that. Charles, I saw you kind of wanting to say something. Do you want to come up and?
No, well, when you do the trees, I'll come with them.
Okay, sounds good. Everybody's interested in trees. We've been talking about trees for how long, Paul? Forever. We've been talking about trees forever, and we'll continue to talk about trees, I think. What about on this side, Boy Scouts? Y'all got anything y'all want to add about trees? No? All right, good. So with that, I'll call anybody. I think the board has in front of them to adopt everything except for 1 and 6, I believe the planning director said. Anybody want to speak in opposition of the board adopting those remaining 10? Okay.
Well, I'm concerned about the parking landscaping to make sure we have the right trees. Parking landscaping in the non-residential areas. I guess it's 5.
Number 5, so that amendment has to do with adding the requirement that all parking
Okay.
spaces have to be within 60 feet of the trunk of a tree. We can certainly talk more.
About the type of trees is what I
The
was
types of
concerned
trees and like the right selection and how we can make
Gotcha. And we
improvements
can
there.
incorporate that in our discussion. Okay, I just want to make sure that's addressed.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good.
No one in opposition, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to board. I think what sounds like what you're considering is adopting 10 of the 12, excluding 1 and 6. 1 will be excluded, 6 will be turned over to a future workshop, if I understand that correctly. Any deliberations on that, I guess, conclusion?
So you want a motion?
I do.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the LDO round 3, numbers 1 through 12, minus numbers 1 and 6, to revisit at our next, is it our workshop? At our next workshop.
Thank you, Commissioner, appreciate that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good work. Thank you, Planning Board. If anybody's listening, thanks for your attention on putting that in there too.
Can we add a topic?
Yes. Sure.
So while Meredith is here, I want to kind of pivot on a side issue, if you don't mind. It's
Okay,
not on your
sure.
agenda. But we were talking, and I brought to your attention that we have an opportunity to possibly adjust your schedule for public hearings coming up in November and December. You have potentially 2 significant public subdivisions coming your way that are currently scheduled on the first December meeting. That is the,
Parker Ridge and Tom's Creek.
both have many acres and many lots. Right now, I do not anticipate a work session topic. There may be something, but for November 15th. If you're interested, we could schedule one of those public hearings for November 15th, so you can break it up and not have 2 in one night. Would that be of interest to you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Which one? Does it matter?
I think Parker Ridge is probably going to be the November 15th at this stage.
And the other one is what, December 1st?
Tom's Creek would be the December 6th meeting, I believe. So that is your preference as of right now? Okay, so we'll go with planning on that and keep you informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah. Also, while you, and Meredith, maybe I know Commissioner Medley was talking about that, conservation versus cluster. Maybe,
Cluster,
maybe
yes.
add that to a workshop in the future. I think all of us could have a better understanding of that. You okay with that,
Well,
Commissioner?
that's fine.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cluster and
Appreci-
conservation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, I guess this is you, Kelly.
Yes.
Or maybe the attorney. Approval of resolution 2022 R21 relating to town of Roseville and the Roseville Rural Fire District proposal unification.
I'll be back.
Oh, I tell you what, let's do a 10-minute. We'll start back at 8:30, a quick recess. Yeah, no problem.
Sure. It is July.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We on board action number 2, approval of resolution of 2022 R21 relating to the town of Roseville and the Roseville Rural Fire District proposed unification. I see, Kelly, you have the mic there, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And just on that note, I want to note that thanks to Rob and Eric, if you can hear our sound is much better today. Because we had somebody come in and do some work and tune it all up. So,
Oh, nice. Good job.
yeah, good,
And I
good
like that
job
we have
getting it going. And just to put a plug, as I was talking to Commissioner Vilga, one of your items, I think, when you reconvene this tree conversation, is a tree board, an urban forest board. That is within the realm of your ordinance that you adopted in the LDO. It talks about that. It talks about how you do that within the Tree City USA. And so when we reconvene, I'm going to bring some examples of that, and it's a very.
That's a good point. Should we do that first before we pass? Should we get a tree board together first?
I'd be happy
with
to,
things?
I would be happy to share with you examples of what a tree board might do and what it calls out in your ordinance, and then we can kind of talk about that before we engage and further and see if that's something of interest to you. But I think it is you're going that step soon, I think, and I think that would be of interest to you. So I don't know when you want to do it, but I could bring information forward to you.
But you don't want to wait on it because, people are sometimes slow to sign up.
That's what I was going to say.
And you want to keep this process moving while it's moving.
Yeah, it may come out as a natural part of that conversation.
I'm wondering how long it take to put a tree board together, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we plan on the work session, and we'll introduce that topic as part of that work session, too.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
But while you're talking about trees, just one thing. So tree board, Sheila has said this since the first day she ever moved to this town, and beautification. And the reason I say that is a lot of times developers come in and they have kind of their standard stuff. Planning board doesn't spend time on it. We don't spend time on it. We now have somebody in town code enforcement, I believe, right? Is that correct?
We do have that position, yes.
Oh, okay, we have that position. But I think it would help to have somebody focused on not just the technical standards, but what does this look like, right? In addition with the tree and beautification board. That's my plug. I'm
Gotcha.
gonna keep plugging it. Thank you.
I was
Great.
just going to say also, I'm glad that you had the TVs working because they were not working for planning. They were
Correct.
whatever.
They were pink.
Yes. Ready? We're not going to burn down, we're going to have fire discussion. Here we go. So this culminates about 18 months of discussion, and hopefully we'll continue that discussion on how we might, with the Roseville Rural Fire District, start moving towards unifying and having the Roseville Fire Department be part of the town. So tonight we're talking about step 1 in this process overview of the 3 steps essentially that need to take place over a period of time that you would ultimately have the fire department become a town department. So step 1, just to review, is what we're going to talk about tonight. If you move on tonight and pass this resolution that we're going to discuss, you'd move on to step 2, which is working on a unification agreement. And if that then, that sets out the contractual commitments for how this relationship would work. And then step 3 is the execution and ultimately the Department of Roseville Rural Fire District becoming Roseville Fire Department. So tonight is the culmination, I said, of 18 months of many meetings, many discussions. We had a large working group in here, almost monthly or every 8 weeks, of representatives from fire department employees to Rural Fire District Board memberships to fire department leadership to town leadership, town staff, and HR, working together and talking about how this can move forward. And we introduced this topic with you back in June, I believe, and went through the draft of what we thought was a resolution that might move forward. And what came out of that was then, and let me just kind of go back with that to remind you what that proposed resolution said in general, some big bullets back when we talked about this in June, that we were eyeing July 1, 2024 as unification date, that the town will assume the responsibility of fire protection in the district, so both incorporated and unincorporated. The town will take ownership of most of the assets. The town will accept the transfer of the Roseville Rural Fire District full-time employees, that a full-time fire chief would be hired January 2024, and transfer then also the fire district reserves dedicated to fire services to the town. That's what we talked about when we met a few months ago. And when we got done with that, then the fire district board continued their refinement of the resolution. And they came back with some modifications, and those modifications and ultimately their approval, which took place about 2 weeks ago, is in your packet and shows some red lines. But here's what they suggested that they would like to have, and we have incorporated most all these into your resolution. And if you remember, the theory was that there would be 2 resolutions adopted. First, the Roseville Rural Fire District resolution, which is in your packet, which has been adopted, which the real big genesis of that is asking you as a town to take over the services in under these general conditions. You then are going to consider tonight adopting a similar resolution that mirrors that and says we shall accept this, and here are the conditions. And what changed from the draft you saw before are some of these big bullet points. That they will retain the ownership of the engine and rescue fire truck, and sale proceeds would go to the foundation. The foundation, as identified in the agreement, is the Rural Roseville Fire Foundation, which does not exist right now. It will sometime in the future, probably shortly during or after an agreement is reached between, the final contractual agreement is reached between the town. This is a foundation that, if you remember in the agreement, will serve as kind of the basis of keeping history of fire department, will be there for help fundraising of special events and other various things, but not necessarily associated with the operating of the fire department. Also another bullet would be recognition of the full-time firefighter seniority. So essentially this says that they would transfer the existing full-time employees would transfer into the town with all their years of service recognized by the town of service that they have currently for different benefits and such. It would not be applicable to the retirement program. If you remember, we had that conversation before, that they have to, this is part of the reason they come in, is so they can be part of the local government retirement plan. But that is regulated and says new employees, they would be designated new employees, have to start at 0 years and start building. But for all other benefits, generally, those employees would come over through years of seniority.
I'm sorry, Kelly, so all of those years that some of them have, there's another retirement plan for them that they can do besides?
They would carry those other retirement plans over too, yes, that they have existing right now. Thank you. Volunteers will continue in their current role. We just clarified that. That the Roseville Rural Fire District may pay off existing debt and may make new capital acquisitions prior to unification, but those also all need to be reviewed by you as part of their process.
Do we have that in writing?
What I just said?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's one of my biggest concerns. The capital acquisitions prior to unifications could be anything, but we're on the hook for that once it comes over, if it's part of our.
Yeah, so if you, and Amy, if you can guide me quickly, if you remember where that section is, I can go through there and find that, Commissioner Vilga. It is it number 6, page 3?
Section, the second paragraph of section 8.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it says operating responsibility. That the interim period, the department shall not make any material changes to its operations and standards and shall not incur any new debt, refinance or any existing debt, encumber or dispose of any property, give easement to any property, enter into agreements, except those that may be canceled or not with more than 30 days notice, and make any changes, employee benefits or material changes.
Why did we scratch out make any capital acquisitions?
Except for the annual budget.
That was
So they, remind me what we did there. Go ahead, come on.
That was. So that cross-through represents one of the changes that the fire department made in their adoptions. So a lot of what you see in here, and in the version that has the watermark with the draft behind it, all of those red line marks generally come from the edits that the fire department had made since the June version that you last saw.
So why would they be allowed to make capital acquisitions during the interim period? I'm just not understanding. Why would we agree to that?
I think the thought was that there would be a stopping point with the county, because they also had to get their approval for funding any of those at their level, and then also, I can't remember the exact thinking, was it, we thought that we would still have to be able to monitor them, right, and such like that? Do you remember?
But if they do, the portion still falls to the town, so why would we be in agreement with that during the interim period? That doesn't make sense to me.
There's no permissions asked.
That was one of my two questions on this
Right.
whole agreement, so that's one of them.
Let me think about it for a second, make sure I get the answer right.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
And I'm going to look at
What
Commissioner
page is
Sneed
that
and
on?
Amy to remind me too.
I'm thinking that was a question that they asked Amy, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you had given the explanation when they wanted to leave it in there of why it should come out. Am I thinking of the wrong part?
Because those numbers could change everything at the end.
No, that was their strike through they asked for, right? Yeah.
That's right, that was the one that, it came to us in the final draft.
So if you wish not to include that, we could take that out, still pass a resolution, and show them we have a difference, and move on and have that discussion.
So the only thing you're striking is make any capital acquisitions,
Yes.
but they shall not incur any new debt, refinance, or any existing debt. All that stays, right?
Correct.
So
Wouldn't that take
with
care of
that
it?
in there, they wouldn't even be able to buy breathing equipment,
It's
I
not
mean,
assumed.
small
Let's not
capital
assume.
things.
They could buy it for cash.
In other words, is it
Right.
So I think when this provision was first put in the original draft, the intent here was to basically say, there's an agreed upon budget between the county, the town, and the department. And once there's an agreed upon budget, that's what the department would spend during the year, right? I mean, just in kind of layman's terms, that's what this paragraph is really trying to get at, is what everybody agrees to in the budget process is what everybody should expect to occur during the year.
But even capital, this thing is struck out. At the end, it said, except through annual budget process. So what you're saying is,
Right, they wouldn't do any of that except through the annual budget process.
it has to be approved by us in the county.
That's right.
I just do not want anything left up to interpretation.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if they do that, right, we just struck it out completely, but if
Yeah.
they do that by however they do it, it could be some cash transaction, I don't know.
Right.
Right? I think it should fall to them. And if we just say it shall not unless it falls completely on them, it's interim. So you have to designate what you're talking about. I just heard you give an interpretation, right? Now, if someone from the fire board gives a different interpretation, where does that leave us?
So let's.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you have a fair point, and for whatever reason, I thought I didn't have much concern until, and it's good that we have this conversation, because I can't defend it right now. And I think it would be my advice, based upon this, is that the resolution should be your resolution. So if this is something you want to include and keep it, you should keep it. And those are the items that we'll work through in the contract. So this is obviously a point, and I think I don't have any reason to defend it tonight. So I would say keep it in, and we'll bring it to their attention that this is going to be, we're going to need to spell this out further. And that's what the intended resolution, this is a pretty in detailed resolution, but there's going to be a lot more coming in the contract. So if you want to keep it in there, we can definitely spell it out further if there's interest, how we can get there, if they have suggestions that we would find suitable in that contract. So my suggestion is keep it in if you adopt this and amend this version to keep it in.
What do you think, April? I know you've been more involved with this than anybody.
Well, I was interpreting it as Ronnie was. If all of this is done, they can't incur any new debt, refinance any existing debt, encumber, dispose, blah, blah, blah. I interpreted that to take care of that one line. But Sheila makes a good point. She doesn't.
Yeah, I think if a commissioner wants to leave that in there, you have any heartburn?
I think we should leave it in there
Willis, you okay with just
because
leave
of
it in?
interpretation alone.
Yeah, I just don't like things left up to interpretation by different people,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna interpret it in my favor.
So let's leave it in, and then as we get to the contract discussions, we'll see if there's any reasoning that could be articulated further in the contract to
Okay.
allow it.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And then the cash reserves will stay in place that are identified June 30th, 2023. Those are the big items. Everything else pretty much stays the same. You can see that they have agreed to give you all the assets. One item I do want to bring to your attention on page 3, within section 4, is that they have interest to building a building on their Burlington Mills property that they could use for storage, which will be our property, but that would be used for storage of minimally the old fire engine that they own and anything else the foundation owns. So this is a building that would be incorporated on that property that we'll own for storage of foundation-owned items. Because the one item they're most concerned about is the long-term ability to store items at their current site, which is adjacent to the existing fire station. And as you know, we've talked about that assessment of that fire station is ongoing, and in fact, in a week from now, about less than a week, I'm gonna get a verbal report from the assessment team, the chief and I are, and then they're gonna come back with a report, and they're gonna tell us what they believe is the long-term future of that fire station. And there's probably some speculation that that area might change, including their storage unit, which they have built there to hold their equipment. So they want to try and resolve that issue and relocate their equipment to this site here. I don't have necessarily concern about it. In fact, it's kind of an interesting thought. But it allows, and that more details will have to be worked out in the agreement again. But that's what they're requesting in their resolution, that they would have the ability to build a building on our property and store their assets that the foundation will ultimately own in that building. It's not a big building. It's not supposed to be a big building. Those will be spelled out further in the agreement.
I have a question, Kelly, because I know they did, there were plans for the old firehouse they were done and completed a couple of years ago. I remember seeing those. So what's going to happen with that? Because there were plans based on if they built new and if they extended it.
Yeah, I've never seen those.
For the existing firehouse?
Yes, I
Yeah,
remember
And they
that.
should have been shared during that assessment. So
Wait.
they may have given it to the assessor who's doing
Oh, because they made a lot of sense. They took into consideration the age of the building, needed more space. Were you there?
Who
No?
did that?
I know Wake County was, Ronnie, you were there.
Yeah, I remember
right?
ones about the remote buildings, but I don't remember the big building.
I do, because they were talking about sleeping quarters, how it was going to have better sleeping quarters inside the building. They did everything top to bottom. And I know that Wake County, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, but I know I have notes. He was there, and the gentleman who designed it was there. Because I remember Rodney was explaining it to me extra. So they have them. And they paid,
That should have been shared.
no,
Maybe ask for it,
yeah.
because we're going to do the study, right?
Wake County and us are sponsoring this, paying for it, yes.
So I heard you say two things, two different ways. So
Okay.
I'm trying to clarify.
Yes.
First, you said, we will build the building, and they will store the truck or something in there. Then at the end of it, you said they'll build the building. Which is it?
So they intend to build a building and own the building.
But we will buy the
Texas.
land? Where's our part?
It's our land that they're going to turn over to us as part of their asset exchange.
So currently, it's property that they have.
That's correct.
Purchased, right?
Yes,
And they will build the building.
yes.
Gotcha. Because I was like, why are we building a building for them to store foundation stuff?
That's the land around the corner,
Yeah,
right?
they first was posing, they wanted to keep the property, didn't they? They didn't want to keep the property, but the property is kind of tied to some other property or something we got, or?
No, I think we came to the conclusion it'd be better to have the town control all their properties and assets.
So that includes the lot
This
near
is somewhat,
Waite Avenue as well?
they
Yes.
don't keep the property.
All assets.
So they would build their own building on the land that they already have, which will eventually be town property. Is that what I'm hearing
Yeah,
you say?
if they, so what we need to do in our contract, our next step, is outline when they think they're going to do that, make sure we're clear on that. If it happens before July 1, 2024, we have to lay out the terms, how that's going to happen. If it happens after, we still have to lay out the terms, how that's going to happen. So right now, I don't know what their intended timeline is or interest. We haven't gotten that level of detail in this resolution conversation. All they have said is they would like to be able to access that site and build a building on that site.
And before July 1, 2024, before the acquisition actually happens, it would be their land that they could build on it, a property for the fire department, obviously. And then after that, it becomes town land.
Or the contract will spell out even more specifically
If there's
what they
something
can
more
or can't do
detailed.
between now and July 1,
Gotcha.
2024.
And does the foundation have any power, say, anything with fire department?
The foundation does not exist right now, so they have to establish a foundation.
Okay.
And then within that will be the bylaws, what the foundation shall do or not do, but it will not be overseeing the fire department.
Will not be involved in operations of the fire department. I'm just clarifying this. I
That's-
read it,
that's-
but I want to
that's-
clarify it.
That's my understanding, yes.
I just wanted it in writing, not just our
Right,
understanding.
no, but that will be the intended language we'll take to the.
For the
agreement.
contract.
That's right.
So I just have one other question. I think you addressed it, but I'm not sure.
Thanks.
So where they're located at on East Young Street, the rental property also, that's getting turned over to the town, and then the town will be collecting the rent? Or will the tenant be able to stay there? How's that going to work?
Not called out specifically, but the town would own the property.
Oh, I think we need to know what's going to happen with the chamber at least. Because that's where we partner with them. They would need to know as well.
Yeah, I would assume that the town would not do anything until ready to do something, to make modifications and changes. We can spell that out in the agreement if that's of interest to you.
Okay, please do.
Kelly, now that makes sense, but what you just said about the shed now is my interpretation of where they may choose to pay off existing,
They what?
make the new capital, because they will be building that shed on, which will be now our land, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's why that statement is in there.
I think the town gave the big deposit to purchase that land anyway. Just saying.
They have a site on that land that I did not know. They also had generally plans laid out for that land already, where the fire station would go.
They pulled all that out the night we were at that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one, that building out there.
So if you're ready, I mean, you can see that there's going to be continuing, now the multi-page agreement comes in. Most of the effort will be spent on funding and the employee transition. But each one of these paragraphs are going to have more to it. You've raised some good points that need to be addressed. But it will be built out, and most of these agreements I've seen are 20 to 30 pages long. And it will really start to get into the funding mechanism of the department itself, and how we will have to do that. And so, not only will you have an agreement, but you'll also start to gain more of an understanding of the potential impacts to a department coming on in 2024. And that's why I like to get going on it, because that's only a year and a half away, and actually one budget year away. And if we're going to do this right, it's working with not only this department, but more importantly, Wake County, because they are the partner, the funding partner with us on this. And we need to make sure we got a understanding with them of how this transition is going to occur, so that the town comes out generally on the good side of taking this over and is not burdened with all, if there are extra costs. I do not know there are. I want to make that clear. But that's the work that we have to start working on as we transition now.
What's the cost share percentage with the county?
I think last I heard, and Mayor and April and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's in the 53 to 47. So 53% is town and 47 is the county. Maybe higher than that now as we grow.
And was there a proposal for that 47 to decrease? I don't know why I remember that. but I
Yeah,
feel
so
like I
that is
remember
based
that.
upon population.
Gotcha.
So as we grow comparatively,
Last year,
so,
that's the
yep, okay, so 53, 46, 50, 54, 46
Gotcha.
last year, 54, 46 this year. So it's just grown tenth of a percent or so.
And as we incorporate more, obviously, we're bigger in town, so we'll.
Yeah, our share is going to continue to grow.
Gotcha. Just want to clarify that for the public.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Kelly, is there still a good feeling about the move finally? I mean, they sounded, I recall that they were ready for this to happen. Are they still?
Yes.
Good.
Even more so. So as the mayor indicated, the first couple versions we got back since our meeting had some wishes, I would call them, and we said we could not accept those. And we kind of further clarified them, and you could see, that moved them, they did not resist that. And I think the temperament and the interest is very high over there. They are ready. It's going to take work, though, to get through this agreement. There's no doubt. But I do sense the employees are ready. I think the board is generally ready. I think leadership's ready. So I think we're going to have productive agreement discussions with some detailed conversations.
April, you have similar thoughts?
I do have similar thoughts, but I'm excited about this next stage because that's where any questions that are asked or assumptions that are made, they're ironed out in this next step. So,
Yeah, this is just a kickoff, ain't it?
This is just the kickoff.
The
This
game
is-
is played next.
right,
The game is just starting.
right.
A lot of work was done in the resolution, though. Even Greg Grayson, who's, again, continues to be a very instrumental help to us and facilitator in this discussion, has indicated that this level of detail is pretty unique at this step for most communities and districts, because they typically come up with a lot less and more platitudes. And we chose to dig in, and there's going to be more. So we hope we identified and uncovered most of the issues that we need to address now.
I mean, Grayson, he's with the county, right?
Greg Grayson's our consultant that's been working with us.
Right, I remember him from there, but is he also with the county? That was he ever retired from there?
He has worked in this area before, but he is out of Greensboro.
Yes, Elon. Okay, gotcha.
So if you're ready, I think if you're ready, I would hope you would entertain a motion to approve the town resolution with the amendment to include shall not make any capital acquisitions in your resolution, and then have the mayor sign that and forward it on to the Rural Fire District Board and conclude this resolution, and we would move into the next step.
That's great. April, if you would, since you've been worked so hard on this, I'd like for you to make a motion either for or against. And I think I heard the major concern was leave that one statement in there.
Okay.
So if you would,
All right.
let's hear what your motion would be.
I would like to make a motion to approve the Resolution 2022-R-21 relating to the town of Roseville and the Roseville Rural Fire District proposed unification with the addition of leaving in the statement, make any capital acquisitions to Section 8 of the agreement.
Thank you. I hear a second on that.
Second.
Okay, got a second from Commissioner Austin. Any other discussion on it? Everybody pretty comfortable and clear now?
Welcome aboard.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Kelly, thank you, Amy, all that, and I want to special give thanks to all the work April has done. She has really, she had, if this is the kickoff, she's kicked it off, so just want to thank her. I somewhat took a step back, and she's really has done an excellent job, so thank you for getting us this part, April, really appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
So thank you. Any other thing about the fire department while we own it, Kelly or April? Anything else that we need to talk about?
I do not have anything, I don't believe.
Didn't they hire an assistant fire chief over there?
They're not going to hire an assistant fire chief.
Right, they have eliminated that position, and they have brought on a battalion chief, it's called.
Okay, that's what it was. I'm sorry.
Battalion chief's full-time,
Right.
and will be 8 to 5, Monday through Friday in the station.
Because Donnie was telling me that, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate that. That's a big step. I think the fire department has approved their resolution, and we approved ours, so that's a big part of that. So next item, communications from town attorney.
The only communications I have so far will be in closed session.
Okay. Communications from town manager.
An update from your meeting 2 weeks ago, where we approved the infrastructure agreement with Walbrook. Today, we were able to review the paperwork associated with the collateral that they have committed to, and that is moving forward. We are attempting to, we're meeting with the contractor this week still. The goal was to try and sign the contract by Friday. DOT is continuing their final review of the paperwork. They've made a couple more requirements that are required by the federal government for bid review. That'll take a couple more days, so more than likely, the bid will not be signed until next week, but everything is getting into place. So I'll keep you informed.
Yeah, we need to have a celebration when we sign that thing somehow.
How about a groundbreaking celebration?
Maybe meet at Greenways or something, but really that's gonna be a big step for Main Street vision. If we ever get that done, so tremendous hard work has gone into that by a lot of people over many, many years, including former Mayor Frank Eagles. You know, he really put in a lot of work and deserves a lot of recognition for Main Street. If we can get that thing signed this coming up week, it'll be a big milestone, big step for Main Street for sure. No doubt about it. So
that's all I have, sir.
Thanks. Communications from town board. Anything? I know great reports already. Anything else from the town board? I will close by saying the mayor's show coming up next week. As y'all know, I scheduled the guests on there at least 6 to 8 months out, and Rodney was scheduled to be on there Thursday. So what we're planning to do, we got a little tribute, a little video tribute we're going to do on there in honor of him. And also Donnie is going to come on and just give us a brief status, thing from his perspective, the new chief. I will say, to any general public that's listening, Donnie has a lot of experience. The whole fire department has a lot of experience, and they are really operating really well. They're doing really, really good over there. So any citizens that is wondering about the really the response and everything that the fire department, if they needed, they're there, and they really are ready for any kind of issues that come up. So great job adjusting to the times that's happening there. So great job there. So with that, I don't have anything else to report. Last chance for the board, anything? Not hearing any, someone would read the closed session notification, and we will adjourn into closed session. Not adjourn, but we will go into closed session and come back into public session after that for adjournment. So I'm not sure how long we'll be in there, but if you want to hang around, we will come back into a public session after closed session. So with that, I entertain a motion.
All right, I read it. Move to go into closed session to consult the town attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, Appendix 3.
Okay, we've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Sheila Sutton seconded that, Madam Clerk. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're in closed session. So thank you, board.